Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Okay, happy Friday everybody. I hope you've had a productive week and I wish you all a restful weekend ahead. First up, yesterday, Thursday, the Politburo, the parties and therefore China's supreme decision-making body, met for its monthly meeting, and the topic was, quote, to analyze and study the current economic situation and make further arrangements for economic work, end quote. China commentators were quick to point out that this is not the usual topic for the September Politburo meeting, suggesting leadership is deeply concerned, as it should be, for the economy. All we have from the meeting is an official readout, which we should take note of here. Quote, it is necessary to issue and utilize long-term special government bonds and local government special bonds to better leverage the role of government investment. The reserve requirement ratio should be lowered. The substantial interest rates cuts should be implemented. Efforts should be made to stabilize the real estate market. Public concerns should be addressed by adjusting housing purchase restriction policies, lowering interest rates on existing housing loans, and promptly improving policies related to land, fiscal tax, and finance to promote the establishment of a new model for real estate development. Efforts should be made to boost the capital market. End quote. The line, utilizing long-term special government bonds and local government special bonds to better leverage the role of government investment, is especially interesting, as analysts have been waiting for greater fiscal stimulus for months. We had monetary stimulus on Tuesday of this week. Is this Politburo statement a sign that fiscal support is coming too? Well, on this point, UK-based Reuters reports today that Beijing plans to issue around 2 trillion RMB, approximately $300 billion of special sovereign bonds, quote, as part of a fresh fiscal stimulus, end quote. According to 2 unnamed sources, as part of the package, the Ministry of Finance plans to issue 1 trillion yuan of special sovereign debt primarily to stimulate consumption amid growing concerns about the economy. Part of the Ministry of Finance proceeds raised via special bonds, which are floated for a specific purpose, will be used to increase subsidies for the trade-in and removal of consumer goods and for the upgrade of large-scale business equipment, said the 2 sources. The proceeds will also be used to provide a monthly allowance of about 800 yuan, or $114 per child, to all households with 2 or more children, excluding the first child, the first source said. Meanwhile, US-based Bloomberg writes that China is considering injecting up to 1 trillion yuan, $142 billion of capital, into its biggest state banks to increase their capacity to support the struggling economy. Quote, the funding will mainly come from the issuance of new special sovereign bonds. The details have yet to be finalized and are subject to change. Such a move would be the first time since the global financial crisis in 2008 that Beijing has injected capital into its big banks. End quote. Next up, in what would be a very embarrassing development for Beijing, yesterday, Thursday, US-based The Wall Street Journal, in an exclusive report, writes that China's newest nuclear-powered attack submarine sank in the spring, a major setback for one of the country's priority weapons programs. Citing US officials, the outlet explains that the episode, quote, which Chinese authorities scrambled to cover up and hasn't previously been disclosed, end quote, occurred at a shipyard near Wuhan in late May or early June. The US doesn't know if the sub was carrying nuclear fuel at the time it sank, but experts outside the US government said that it was likely. The Zhou-class vessel that sank is the first of the new class of Chinese nuclear-powered subs and features a distinctive X-shaped stern, which is designed to make the vessel more maneuverable. A senior US defense official reportedly told the outlet, quote, it's not surprising that the PLA Navy would try to conceal the fact that their new first-in-class nuclear-powered attack submarine sank pairside. In addition to the obvious questions about training standards and equipment quality, the incident raises a deeper question about the PLA's internal accountability and oversight of China's defense industry, which has long been plagued by corruption. End quote. Later on Thursday, the Pentagon confirmed the report. Next up, China's intelligence, counter-espionage, and Secret Police Agency, the Ministry of State Security, is very unhappy with New Zealand this week. On Thursday, using its official WeChat account, the spy agency accused New Zealand of, quote, harassment and intimidation, end quote, in its investigations of Chinese nationals after Wellington released an annual security threat report that labelled China as a, quote, complex intelligence concern, end quote. The Ministry of State Security condemned New Zealand for what it said were unfounded claims of a, quote, Chinese intelligence threat, end quote, adding that such actions harmed bilateral relations. The MSS said the allegations reflected New Zealand's, quote, ideological bias, end quote, and, quote, Cold War mentality, end quote, which undermined cooperation between the two countries. New Zealand, as an Anglophone nation of settlement, like Australia, Canada, and the US, is a member of the so-called Five Eyes, which also includes the UK. All members of this intelligence alliance have in recent years warned of increased Chinese espionage efforts in their respective countries, and have committed more resources to counter-espionage, as well as their own spying activities against China. The New Zealand Security Intelligence Service, NZSIS, released an annual threat report earlier this month that branded China as a complex intelligence concern, highlighting the threats of foreign interference. The report stated, quote, a small number of illiberal foreign states engage in foreign interference against democracies as a tool for advancing their interests abroad, end quote, adding, quote, New Zealand is not alone in facing the threat of foreign interference. It is a challenge countries face globally, including in our region, as illiberal states try to take advantage of others' size or openness, end quote. As Hong Kong-based the South China Morning Post observed at the time, quote, the unusually blunt language comes as New Zealand's recently elected centre-right government tilts the country's foreign policy more closely toward traditional Western allies, end quote. According to the Ministry of State Security in its Thursday post, the NZSIS report, quote, openly smears the broader overseas Chinese community and students. Following the release of this report, some overseas Chinese in New Zealand have been subjected to harassment and intimidation by so-called New Zealand intelligence personnel, end quote. The agency also warned New Zealand, quote, whether out of imagination, ulterior motives, or instigation by external forces, creating contradictions and differences between China and New Zealand and pushing someone else's agenda will not solve any of one's own problems, but will instead harm one's own interests and bilateral relations, end quote. It then turned to its greater concern, quote, the Five Eyes Alliance is the world's largest intelligence organization, which has long violated international law. Not only has New Zealand repeatedly rehashed the Chinese cyber attacks and spread various false information about Chinese hacker threats, but it has also pretended to be a victim while cooperating with the Five Eyes Alliance to arbitrarily steal information and data from other countries and engage in espionage activities. China never interferes in the internal affairs of any country and opposes other countries interfering in China's internal affairs. New Zealand should maintain a rational and objective perception of China, prioritize its fundamental and long-term interests, stand on the right side of history and morality, not take sides, and not stray further down the wrong path, end quote. If you're getting some value from today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button. Liking, sharing, and subscribing are a tremendous help for the channel. It's the only way in which the channel can grow and be shown to new people. Thank you so much. That is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Friday, have a restful weekend, and I will see you all tomorrow.